Right now, almost every enterprise on Earth has an AI project running. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Many of them will never make it into production. Not because the models don't work, because the data underneath them was never ready. Today, I've got the one person who can explain exactly why. From inside the company everybody associates with AI, NVIDIA, Kevin Deierling, SVP of Networking. Kevin, it's great to have you here. We're sitting here just ahead of Accelerate 2026, where you and I take main stage to show something we've both been building together for more than a year. I'm not going to show it to you today, folks. Today, I want to do the part nobody slows down for, the why it matters. And honestly, the why is every bit as compelling as the what. So Kevin, for folks who don't know you, give us a quick version of what you do at NVIDIA, especially on the networking side. And then I want to ask you something that might sound a little strange. You talk about GPUs all day. Everybody wants to. But you built your world around networking. Help us understand why that's where the real action is right now.
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Deierling. I'm the SVP of Networking here at NVIDIA. I work for a guy that you might have heard of, Jensen Huang. And it turns out networking is incredibly important for AI because people are confused. They think the server is a computer with processors in it and GPU, and really the data center is the new unit of computing. And we do incredibly deep co-design, extreme co-design across all elements of that. So that's why it's important. Networking is vitally important. And of course, storage is connected with networking. So I manage part of the team that runs storage here at NVIDIA.
So look, just for folks who may not be super familiar, maybe give us a little bit of an update on where NVIDIA is with networking, with Spectrum-X and Bluefield, and how this is really changing the game in AI, and then we'll shift into the data side of things.
Sure. So it's probably one of the best kept secrets, but NVIDIA is the world's largest networking company today. So if you look at data center networking, we're larger than everyone else combined. And that's because of the explosive growth of AI. We have our ConnectX, we have Bluefield, which is our data processing unit or DPU. That operates as a storage controller inside of storage boxes. NVIDIA doesn't build storage, so we rely on partners like Everpure to build those platforms. We do reference architectures. We connect it into the compute, and it's vitally important that we have storage that feeds the AI and the GPUs.
Okay, so the network gets the data moving fast, and we all know that GPUs need fast moving data. But the reality is it needs the right data. And that's where today's conversation comes in. So look, Kevin, there's an enormous wave of enterprise AI investment right now. We talked about some of that earlier. The GPUs are in place, the ambition's there, every board is clamoring for an AI strategy. But we're also seeing a gap between what's been launched and what's actually running in production. From where you sit, what's the thing that separates the companies crossing the line from the ones that haven't?
Yeah, it's overwhelmingly an AI data readiness problem. So the compute works, the GPUs are here, the factory runs, but basically the data has not been refined. So the fuel is not refined. So just putting more GPUs is not going to solve the problem. You fix it upstream by getting the data ready. So the same cost argument is used for reducing GPUs. Capital sitting idle because the data wasn't ready is wasted. You cannot do that. So we actually have to fuel the AI with data. The fuel is the data.
Okay, so Kevin, go on a journey with me. If we were thinking about a traditional factory, a factory that makes cereal or clothing or cars, we would really be thinking about the raw materials that we would need to put into that factory. And I think we've all seen from the Industrial Revolution that the more that we refine those raw materials into refined sugar, textiles, and the so on, that refining of the product actually makes the factory significantly more efficient. So now we're talking about getting data to be AI ready data. That term's getting thrown around a lot, and I'll be honest, it sounds a little bit like a buzzword. So let's strip it all the way down. In your opinion, what does data actually have to be before AI can do things with it? Help us understand this and unpack it a bit.
Yeah, we need to do AI ready data. And that means that you actually make it current, connected, and contextual. And context is a really important thing. We need to enrich the data so that we actually have all of the metadata. We need it into the system ready. That's the unsolved part. That's the part that we actually need to do. Most enterprise data is technically accessible, but it's not understandable. We need it to be semantically searchable. We need the most current version of the data, and it has to be connected to GPUs. So the missing steps is having the data to be understood, that is context and refined.
So I hear you. Data that's current, connected, and contextual. Now, let's kind of take a step back, right? Because we are talking about refining data and getting it AI ready. And I want to really bridge that to the AI factory that we've talked about on this show before. But this time I get to hear from the source. I mean, NVIDIA ultimately coined the term AI factory. Walk us through the mental model and the way you think about it and how this all comes together in terms of how customers bring these projects to life.
Yeah, so the concept of an AI factory is really much more than just the AI. The AI is an important tool, but the AI factory is about generating business value, not just the AI itself. And so AI is the process, and data is the raw material. And it usually consists of tokens, but we need to actually refine that data because the product that comes out of that is business value. It's insights. It's actually today we're plan, reasoning, and acting. We're actually performing functions. So inference is no longer one shot. We used to have a situation that you would ask a question, you'd have a pre-trained model, it would generate an answer. But today it's agentic, and agents are reasoning, they're chained together. We put them into a harness, so you have an agentic loop where AI is eating its own tail. And again, the fuel of that is data. And the data needs to be refined, governed. It needs to have many different pieces of data that is really contextualized. And that context means that we have an ontology. We understand how it's related so that we're looking at the right data. Often there's conflicting data, and we need to actually isolate the correct data. So all of that can be layered on top of the storage platforms that we have to provide the metadata that enriches it. So that agentic AI looks more and more like training. So people thought that inferencing was very, very easy, but it turns out with agents consuming data constantly, operating not at human time scales, but really at GPU compute time scales, it's hammering the storage continuously, not just once per prompt, but hundreds of times in a loop. So all of this only works if the data is feeding continuously, it's available, it's current, with all of the relevant context that's been enriched into the ontology.
So I love where you went with that, right? And I want to make sure that our users connect to when we talk about AI, most people tend to correlate that to LLMs, right? I mean, which are in its instantiation is kind of the shot heard around the world as it relates to AI. But we've since kind of grown and evolved into agentic workflows, which allow essentially AI agents to go and complete a series of tasks in a row without a lot of human intervention. And now we're even extending out into code that essentially takes agentic workflows, tying them together and taking a group of tasks or an entire workflow and delivering that. But what I love about it is it really ties together. If you think of what was the human's job in all of this, the human's job was to connect the data to know that that's an invoice and that's not. That's related to Kevin and that's not. That's old data, that's new data, that's the same record. This is a more current version. And if we're actually going to move towards these complete complex workflows, we need to build that contextual, semantic knowledge graph into our data set. Am I getting that right?
No, that's exactly right. So, if you look at this data is continuously changing, and we have these continuous agentic AI flows, and we need refined data. That's just non-negotiable. We have to have that sort of information. And this is exactly where projects can stall. is that you have everything in place, all of the things are working, but your data has not been contextualized. It hasn't been properly updated. It's out of date. You can have conflicting data. So all of the capabilities that you guys can bring to bear with storage that has the metadata, that keeps the data current, that makes sure that you have atomic updates, all of those things, the provenance of the data, where did it come from? Because if you feed bad data into an agentic AI loop, you're going to get bad business outcomes. And so that is a big part of what I think we need to bring to bear here with the data, is actually to clean and refine that data. And you don't want to do that post hoc. You want to do that as a upfront, that you're actually cleaning and ingesting the data in real time. So it's super important that we have data that's using refined raw materials. We're building an AI factory. You wouldn't build a factory with unrefined materials. We want those refined data to be the inputs to our AI data factory.
So for folks who are trying to get the tease here, this is something we're going to address and demo head on next week at Accelerate. Kevin and I will be on stage to unveil it. But for now, let's talk about how you and I ended up here. NVIDIA works with every storage vendor on the planet, every single one. So I'm genuinely curious, what did you see in what we were building together that made you put more than a year into what we're about to unveil? What was different?
Yeah, so I've been working with the executive management team at Everpure, CTO level, CEO level, Charlie, Rob, Par, all of these folks. There's just deep understanding of storage and data all the way down to the physical layer. And so when we talk about, extreme co-design, we're talking about building an AI factory that's optimized across the entire data center stack. And I think Everpure has really an incredible knowledge all the way down to the flash media itself. And so that was exciting. I think when we were talking about some of the things that we were doing, it started off as just RAG, retrieval augmented generation, and we've moved so much further even beyond that. But if you look at that, there's a lot of complexity here into understanding AI. And I think what we found is a very technically minded company that actually leaned in quickly. It's an execution oriented company that looks at the value propositions from a business perspective and then figures out technically how to deliver against those business needs. And that's really important.
Yeah, it sounds like a great engineering to engineering connection. On a personal level, we've been at this quite a while now, right? It feels like just yesterday that ChatGPT came to all of us in the mainstream. But what surprised you the most about the build out of all of this, and how the industry has kind of evolved here?
Yeah, I think it's just how rapidly this is coming into play. And we've seen, people were sort of surprised at how good that first ChatGPT was and the types of things that it could do. But it was almost like a toy that you could ask it questions and it would come back with reasonable answers that were written in excellent language, large language models. It performs well at producing language. But now what we've seen is very, very rapidly, we've moved well beyond that to these agentic frameworks now that are planning, reasoning, and acting. And the key thing there is augmenting the information. So it's not just a one shot, but we're actually taking all sort of contextualized data. And enterprise has way more data than actually it needs to answer any one given query because that data spans all sorts of different disciplines. So part of the challenge here is to refine the data so that we can semantically search it and we can feed the agents and the AI the data that is relevant, that is allowed from a governance perspective, that we can audit where the information came from. All of those require lots of metadata and processing, and we need to be able to do that in real time because agents are fast. When AI is talking to AI is talking to AI, it doesn't take coffee breaks, it doesn't wait, it doesn't take time to type. Everything moves really, really fast. So we need to keep these AI engines fed with data. And so there's an incredible opportunity here to optimize the storage platforms to become really an AI native data platform.
Yeah, you got me thinking about agents talking to agents. They don't sleep, they don't take coffee breaks, they have near zero latency. And obviously, the GPUs are always hungry for more and more data. So the mechanics and the dynamics of how data flows here becomes super, super important. Let's bring it home for the person listening, the IT leader whose board's asking about AI every week. Be straight with them. Should I wait and really focus on this data issue later and right now just kind of deal with what I have to? Or do I have to make this a priority? And if so, if I make it a priority, um, what's kind of the path I should take down that road?
Yeah, so you absolutely cannot wait. We've seen that ourselves because what we're seeing is that the productivity gains that you're able to achieve with a fully functional AI agentic pipeline are enormous. Okay, so we're not talking about 5 or 10% productivity gains. They're enormous productivity gains and they compound. So as we see things that your development cycles, your marketing campaigns, all of your even code development, everything is accelerating. But just having the models and the infrastructure in place is necessary but not sufficient. So you really need to focus where the data lies to be able to augment that data, to be able to refine the data. It's not just a question of the models. Those are great. You can choose your models. You can have a low end, medium, high end model. But the data, this is not really a storage decision alone. You need to have the capabilities that make this refined AI data, AI ready data. And so that's super, super important. You have to figure out who can touch the data, who has access to the data. You have to make sure that data is current. All of those things are vitally important. And you want to move quickly from experimentation into production because, again, the productivity gains will compound and you'll find yourself in a situation that you're behind and you're going to stay behind. So you have to get started now. And it's not just the infrastructure, it's also this refined AI data that we need.
So I'm hearing you talk about all these productivity gains and all this acceleration, and I'm almost thinking, like, are you viewing as AI almost as like a superpower for organizations until this thing mainstreams and becomes part of everything? Those that jump in first, those that act first, actually have an unfair advantage.
No question, no question. So this is a durable advantage. So having refined, governed AI data is enormously valuable. That's something that your competitors can't buy off the shelf. It's your data, it's an enterprise's data. You need to be able to take that, refine it, make it searchable, make it, the governance has to be there, the access has to be there, and it really needs to be AI ready. Once you have that, AI is not going to just politely settle down. The companies that embrace AI, and I've been talking about this for years, that every company is going to become an AI company. And that's a statement really that's saying the companies that aren't AI ready with AI ready data aren't going to be around anymore. So it's an imperative. It should be a board level, executive level imperative to not just embrace AI and the infrastructure needed to do that, but to get your AI data ready. It has to be ready for AI.
All right. Well, I mean, I think you laid out the why pretty clearly there. And for everyone listening, the what is Everpure and NVIDIA coming to stage with next week? Unfortunately, I'll have to wait till we're on stage and show it to all of you. But I can tell you that it's real and it answers the exact problem we just spent 20 minutes on, getting you to AI ready data. We'll drop the link in the session. We'll encourage you to go watch it. Kevin, anything you want to close with here to our audience as we gear up for next week's event?
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that, being in Vegas, because AI is a team sport. So we need the compute, the network, and the data all has to work together as one. And Jensen's been talking about this for a long time when he said that the data center is the new unit of computing. We have to do that at the enterprise level. We need to bring all of these things together, and I'm excited to be there in Las Vegas, and we'll be able to show this. This will be great.
Well, you heard it straight from Kevin. Appreciate all of our audience sticking around and listening to the why and what AI-ready data really does deliver and why the urgency is now. With that, I'd like to thank our listeners and thank you, Kevin. Encourage everyone out there to subscribe and go out to the Data Wire for more reading. With that, we'll talk to you soon.